The subject today is love. Here's another poem by one of the world's greatest lovers, the 14th century Persian poet Hafiz. The subject tonight is love, and for tomorrow night as well. As a matter of fact, I know of no better topic for us to discuss until we all die. My name is Mary, and I'm an addict, a big love addict. Oh, it's not what you think. Big Love is a TV series about a polygamous family in Utah. 1 man, 3 women, umpteen children. I'm a feminist, monogamous, Unitarian, and you might well be asking, what possesses her to like this show? I like it because it's complex. Certainly the relationships are, and the way power ebbs and flows among the 3 sister wives, the young adult children, and the often hapless husband. The theology is complex too, and the way religion figures in the lives of the members of this family. Caught as they are between a Mormon church that disavows plural marriage and a fundamentalist sect where marriage has become a grotesque parody of itself, with girl children bought and sold as political capital. This family is trying to live their faith responsibly and consciously. In this show, faith is an actor, and acts the way it often does in real life, sometimes inspiring good, sometimes becoming a wedge or a cudgel for egocentrism, wealth, and power. And love, what of love? The family in this drama has bought into what is called the principle, which has been in force off and on in various sects of Mormonism since its inception in the 19th century American West. According to adherents of the principle, the highest realm of heaven is reserved for those who live in plural marriage, creating many, many children for the glorification of God. In this version of marriage, and as I understand it, in any marriage sealed in the Mormon Church, till death do us part is meaningless, because in this worldview, death doth not part. In a recent episode, the fallen away from the faith young adult daughter of wife number 1 is planning a wedding. Her mother is anxiously pressing her to be married, sealed, as it is called, by a Mormon priest. Legal marriage, the mom believes, is a temporal thing, but the seal is for all eternity, and all the pleasures of intimacy that a couple enjoy on earth will be continued and magnified in heaven. This life goes by so fast, the mom implores. How can we live thinking that's all there is to it? Of course, this is a question that goes to all of life, and it is one of the great questions to which every religion must offer answer. And it turns out that religious traditions, which have a fairly concrete sense of life after death, tend to agree that earthly relationships are recreated there, or created anew. And often these relationships in heaven are said to include sex. In Here If You Need Me, UU minister Kate Braystrup tells the story about the Muslim jihadist who dies and goes to heaven. Maybe you've heard this story. He's lived a good and faithful life as he was given to understand what that was by his faith and his culture. Certain promises have been made, and he's excited to be arriving in heaven. He gets to the pearly gates, and whom should he see walking toward him but George Washington? "What are you doing here?" the Muslim asks, and before George can answer, Dolly Madison appears, followed by George Mason, Sally Hemings, and Robert E. Lee. Who are these people, the jihadist demands? I was supposed to have date palms, rivers of wine, and 72 virgins. Oh dear, the gatekeeper says. There's been a misunderstanding. It's 72 Virginians. Well, Unitarian Universalists like this joke because we tend not to have such concrete visions of an afterlife. We tend to agree that if we put our faith in bliss after death, we risk disappointment. And whatever we each may believe about an afterlife, we tend to think that heaven is ours to create here on earth through acts of love, compassion, and justice. I titled this sermon, "Is There Sex in Heaven?" because I like the question. It's mysterious. When I went to see what others had written on this topic, I found an essay with the same title by a Christian philosopher. Heaven is too far away to see clearly, and sex is too close to see clearly, he writes. Pascal says that the human situation is always in the middle between two extremes, or a number of extremes. Too much light, too little light, too much distance, too little distance. So far, I'm with him. There's poetry here. He goes on to note that in the creation story in the book of Genesis, every one of God's acts of creation was an act of differentiation. Light from dark, sea from land, ultimately man and woman. Now this is where this philosopher loses me, because the poetry turns rigid in his cosmology. Once God has created these separate categories, they become, in this view, fixed and immutable, all the way up to heaven. Well, here on earth, this does not match either with what science tells us or our own experience. Even gender identities are not fixed for some of us, and are certainly, for humans as a whole, way more than binary. I get more meaning from the Jewish mystics' reading of the Genesis myth, that God existed before this act of differentiation, and God's separating the light from the darkness and the sea from land were acts of generosity. God withdrawing God's self from creation to make room for human life. Somewhere deep in human consciousness, the mystics believe we remember. We remember that we are all one, all part of God. We live, though, with an illusion of separateness, an illusion that's necessary to preserve in order to live in time and space. Because of this pre-creation memory, the mystics believe, we live with a sense of alienation, a sense of estrangement from the all-in-oneness that is God. Are you with me? You might be wondering, what does this have to do with sex? People mate for all kinds of reasons, and sex is, of course, one. But why do we have sex? Never mind, that's a stupid question. Actually, though, considered theologically, it's not.